Ursula, also known as Ursi, and this is my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a simple, no-knead rustic bread. It is incredibly easy and super satisfying to make your own bread at home. You just need a few simple ingredients and a little bit of time and patience to let the bread rise. I can't wait to show you this bread making method because it just takes the daunting task of making your own bread and makes it so simple and so easy. Anyone can do it. If you can watch this video and read the recipe I've attached below, you can make this bread too. Come check out the ingredients that we're going to use to make this bread. The ingredients you need to make this bread are 1.5 cups of warm water, 2 cups of whole wheat flour, 1.5 cups of white all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 teaspoon of yeast. You'll also need a nice big mixing bowl to combine all the ingredients in. So now that we've checked out our ingredients, let's get ready to add them to the big bowl. Before we mix in our ingredients though, let me tell you a little something about making this no-knead bread. Because we're not kneading it continuously over and over again, the yeast does not get a chance to activate and help develop the gluten. So the way that this bread really develops that gluten and releases the yeast is by letting it sit and rise. This bread needs to rise for 8 hours, which I know sounds like an incredibly long stretch of time. I find that the simplest way to make this not a problem is actually to mix all these ingredients together right before I go to bed at night and then leave them in my big bowl to rise on my counter. When I wake up in the morning, my kitchen smells wonderful. I heat up my oven and I pop that bread in. It makes it so much easier, and then you get to wake up to fresh bread. And who wouldn't love warm, hot, fresh bread for breakfast? So with that being said, make sure that you allot 8 hours of time where you can let this bread rise. Totally fine to mix your ingredients in the morning, let them sit out on your counter for at least 8 hours, and make this bread with dinner. That would actually be the perfect addition to any dinner in my opinion. Let's mix the ingredients. I like to start with my whole wheat flour. So I'm adding that to the bowl, followed by my white flour. Next I'm going to add my salt. Salt is actually the main flavoring agent in this bread, so I call for 2 teaspoons. I know some people think that sounds like a lot, but otherwise you're gonna have flavorless bread and you don't want flavorless bread. Next is the yeast. And last is the warm water. Now you can mix this bread by hand if you'd prefer. I like to pop it in my stand mixer. That way I know that everything's really incorporated and the salt is evenly distributed. If you have a handheld mixer, that works as well. Since I'm popping mine in my stand mixer, let's bring the bowl over and whip these ingredients up. Here we are at the stand mixer, and it's really just as easy as putting this thing down and turning it on to mix. Might have to crank it up a little bit past low. Here we are. Everything looks great and just combined. I can't wait to show it to you over on my little island cart. Take a look at this incredible bread dough that we just whipped up in a few minutes. It's going to double or triple in size overnight, so I'm just going to transfer it to a slightly bigger bowl, give it more space to grow. Your bread dough might be a little sticky, but you should still be able to just pick it up and plop it down. If a little sticks to your fingers and you have clean hands, you can just kind of place it back together. It's also why I always wear an apron. I can just wipe off my hands because it's time to cover the bread in plastic wrap. It's really important that you cover your bread totally fully. So I'm going to take a nice big piece of plastic wrap, making sure it covers my whole bowl. Plastic wrap is notoriously difficult sometimes to work with because it just crumples up and makes a big mess. So just seal off your bowl. As you see, I'm really making sure I don't have any visible sites for air to get in. I actually think I'm going to cover it again going the opposite direction because I'd rather be over safe than really sorry when my bread dough doesn't rise. So it is now double wrapped, if I ever get the plastic wrap off, and ready to go. So this dough has to now sit in this bowl and rise for about 8 hours. I'm going to let it go overnight and wake up to fresh bread in the morning. See you in about 8 hours. So here we are back in the kitchen. It's been 8 hours plus just a little bit extra because I actually let my bread dough rise overnight. If it rises for a little bit longer, not such a much, not a real big deal. 8 hours is the minimum. Always works at 8 hours as well. So I know you can't really super see it from here because it is behind plastic wrap. So I'm really excited to open up this dough. Remember, I double wrapped it last night, and the aroma that you get when you open a bread dough for the first time is just, it's incredible. And this dough really rose. It's puffy. It's wonderful. It might be a little bit sticky, which is very normal. So right now, our next step is to turn it out onto a baking sheet. Let me grab that right now. This is your standard cookie sheet. It is very old. It's actually probably older than me. I grabbed this from my mom's kitchen when I moved out about 1.5 years ago. So now I'm just going to turn my bread dough out right onto the cookie sheet. Sometimes takes just a minute. So guiding with your hand. Remember, the bread dough is a little sticky. Not such a much. So you got a beautiful mound of bread dough right here. And the goal here is to shape it into an oval loaf. And actually, it's kind of already in an oval loaf, but you want to make it look a little bit nicer. Now, the term rustic, when being used in cooking to describe something, really I find just means homemade and kind of not professional. So this rustic bread does not need to look like it came from a mass-produced bakery where all the bread loaves look exactly the same. It is not Wonder Bread. No offense to Wonder Bread. I grew up on the stuff. So I'm going to shape it, and actually kind of came out in a pretty cute little petite loaf. I love it. I'm not going to do anything else to it. If I was going for a different shaped loaf, I would take some more time, but oval I really find is the way to go with this loaf. I'm going to use just a standard kitchen knife to just score the bread with 3 even slices. Maybe if you've made homemade bread before or seen homemade bread, you notice it has that. That really helps when the bread is cooking just to kind of vent the steam out so you don't get soggy bread. So I'm just going to push down a little less than halfway. I'm going to make 1 diagonal line, 2 diagonal lines, and now a 3rd diagonal line. And I could go back and just kind of re-score them if I'd like. Now, I wish I could tell you that when you're done with this, you could just pop your bread into the oven and listen to it bake. Smell it bake, really. Listen to it, doesn't make much noise. But we have to let it rise just a little bit more. Giving it the chance to rise in its loaf helps develop the flavor, helps develop the shape. It'll help your bread hold the shape. So back to our good old friend plastic wrap. This time you don't have to let it rise quite as long. I'm going to let mine rise for about 45 minutes. And I'll check back with you in 45 minutes. We will see our dough has risen just a little bit more. And then we'll be ready to bake. So see you in 45 minutes. Here we are back in the kitchen again, and our bread has been rising for 45 minutes. So our journey together with this bread dough is complete. It's time to pop it right into the oven. You don't need to do any additional steps. It's really as simple as just uncover and pop it into the oven. I always like to take one more smell of my bread dough because it is just an incredible scent to fill your home with and to have. If I could bottle this into a candle, I think I'd become a millionaire. So I'm going to pop this into the oven, and in 30 minutes, with an oven at 400 degrees, you will have your very own beautiful, delicious loaf of homemade bread. So into the oven we go. So here's our bread fresh out of the oven. As you can see, it is completely baked. It browned on top. You've got a nice, beautiful, crunchy crust. And I just know that this bread is soft and pillowy on the inside. So we can't slice into this bread right away. It needs to cool first for at least 15 minutes. Trust me, I'm usually the first person to dive into this warm and delicious bread, but you really need to wait the 15 minutes. It's worth the sacrifice of letting it cool just a little bit, because otherwise when you cut into it, it might fall apart and turn to mush. Or even worse, you could burn your tongue, and we all know how painful that is. You can let it cool for 15 minutes just on a wire cooling rack like this, fresh on the pan. But I like to remove my bread from the pan because I find it cools faster and more completely. So I'm going to take my bread right off the pan using my bare hands. It's kind of hot. I don't recommend holding it and showing it off for this long. But as you see, we've got a nice, beautiful loaf of bread. And it's going to cool here for 15 minutes before I slice into it and have a slice with my morning coffee for breakfast. I'm Ursi from Ursi's Unique Eats. Thank you so much for baking with me. I hope you make your very own bread at home. Enjoy!